My name is Laurence. I'm a butlering and household management consultant. I do work with families of large means and small means, navigating all the personal details of their life. So I have been in the world of etiquette and protocol and all things hearth and home for over 17 years. And I love it. I love what I do. I was introduced to this world at the ripe old age of 17. I had an amazing internship at a professionally managed estate. So I fell into estate management very early. But I like to say that I was reading Martha Stewart Living probably by the time I was 12 years old. So I think I was predisposed to be in etiquette and home and all things hospitality. So I'm delighted that you're here with us today. Today we're going to be focusing on etiquette and networking and the etiquette advantage. And I think that in today's society, etiquette is so important because, you know, in the world of Facebook and Twitter, we're also disconnected. And so when you're actually face-to-face with somebody, it gives you the distinct business advantage to really go above and beyond and make that personal connection for hopefully either a sale or a contact or a job, you know, opportunity. So it's really, really important to present yourself well. And I know that all of us are seasoned professionals in business, and so whether you take away one small tidbit today or you are ferociously writing notes, hopefully you'll find this hour and a half worthwhile. So we'll just jump in and get started. So I'm a butler. I'm a butler and professional household manager for affluent families. Like I said, I started in this industry when I was 17 with an internship. And this is a funny meme that I, just put together because nobody ever knows what the heck I do. So, they think I'm a maid, they think I work, I'm going to say, Gotham City, maybe I'm part of the celebrity entourage. My friends don't even really know what I do. Every time I have a drink with my friends, they say, what is it that you do? What I think I do perhaps is, help a busy or important person's life run more effectively on the personal side as opposed to the business side, like an executive assistant would. But what I actually do is run errands like a crazy person. So that's just a little bit about the world of butlering and household management, and just to let you know kind of where I come from. So this is, butlering is an interesting tradition. I'll just step into it briefly. Obviously started in Europe with households and manners. It's very prevalent in the UK, and back in the Edwardian era, over half of all persons employed were employed in domestic service. So that's really interesting when you think about now, less than 1% of the population even employs household help. So what we mean by that is nannies, housekeepers, drivers, personal chefs, personal assistants, anyone that helps the family in the home as opposed to their business endeavors. So I have been working in professional butlering and household management for many, many years, and I got to a point when I didn't want to take the next largest family and decided that my path was consulting. And so now I'm out on my own doing speaking engagements like this, doing trainings, doing coachings, writing policy and procedure manuals for families to help them train their staff more effectively. And with all of that comes a lot of etiquette type questions. And so really I'm one of the last holdout industries where people can say, well, what fork do I use? Or what's the best approach for this? And sometimes depending on the type of family that you've been raised in, you're not necessarily passed down those tips or tricks. And so I like to make etiquette very, very approachable. This is not about slapping you with a stick in grade school if you were not holding your pencil correctly or not sitting up straight. I really want to make sure that this is just giving you a more polished and professional approach to getting out there in the business world. So moving on, what is etiquette? Etiquette, I have a golden ruler here, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the golden rule. This is kind of the universal principle that is ingrained in all world cultures and world religions, in world political endeavors and political bodies. The golden rule, depending on your tradition, might be stated various ways, but basically it's just treat others how you would want to be treated. And I think that is the crux of etiquette. Another way that most etiquette professionals say what is etiquette is making the other person comfortable. And we do this in a variety of ways. We mirror what the other person is doing. We tune into how they're saying something. And I really think that it's a very gracious, very hospitable way of kind of engaging your fellow persons in the world. Kind of a heart-to-heart approach. My favorite word on the planet is It's a little new agey, forgive me, but it is the word namaste, and it comes from the yoga tradition, which means like my spirit sees your spirit. And so I think that when we actually connect with someone in a business function or out socially, you're tuning into that individual and you're saying you're important and I want to connect with you, here and now, and I'm going to put all other distractions aside. So that's what etiquette means to me. And in the etiquette world, there's a great little anecdote that I don't know if any of you have ever heard. It's been attributed to Queen Elizabeth, Jackie Kennedy Onassis, like all of these ladies, heads of state. But basically the story goes like this, is that there was a big state dinner, very formal, and of course we all think of etiquette as like what fork to use, right? So usually this type of story centers around this eating situation. But the lady of the house was sitting there with her guests, and in between very formal courses where you're using your hands, and it is true that some courses you can use your hands in a formal setting, such as crab legs or something like that, they're eating with their hands, and a little finger bowl is the next thing to be brought out to someone so that they can wash their hands off and dry them with a towel. It maybe sometimes has some soap and water in it, sometimes it has a little flower petal, but it's to clean one's hands for the next course. So whoever the lady of the house was, had the staff, usher in the finger bowl presentation. And the dignitary who was sitting with her wasn't familiar with this custom. So, not realizing he was supposed to wash his hands in it, he picked it up and drank the water of the finger bowl. So, what was the lady of the house to do? Was she to scold the gentleman and say, "Oh no, that's a finger bowl. You're supposed to wash your hands off in that"? No, the moral of the story is she took her finger bowl and she took a sip as well. So isn't that a very gracious way of including the guests and not shaming them? And I just think that's a beautiful story. I know it's a little bit of folklore at this point. I don't know who it's necessarily attributed to, but that is kind of what etiquette means to me. It's being on the same level with someone, mirroring them, making sure that you make them feel comfortable, and not ever shaming them for knowing more or less than you do in the world of etiquette or protocol. And feel free to jump in with questions. Any thoughts on that? So the next thing we're going to be talking about is, how do we do this? How do we do this in real life? How do we, make that personal connection in a business-like setting? Have it be meaningful, have it be memorable, but not overwhelming to the other person. You don't want to give a diatribe of your life story in the effort to connect with someone. So I have about 10 tips or tricks with this slide, and I've given you all a handout with just some pictures associated with each slide, so I'll let you know when we're going on to the next topic, and then you can loop back with an anecdote or a thought that you felt was helpful. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is when you're at a formal networking event, and we're going to primarily talk about networking from kind of a business function sense, where there's a check-in time, you've signed up for the occasion, or the chamber is putting on an open cocktail party, something like that. We're going to kind of keep our conversation to those types of things. My first tip is use the check-in to your advantage. The people that are hosting the party are going to have a lot of inside information for you, and they're going to hopefully be hosting the party graciously and make you feel comfortable when you walk through the door. So what I mean by that is, during the name tag process, they're going to say something like, "Oh, how are you? We have cocktails over here. Appetizers will be served later. Feel free to network and mingle. We're going to have some, speakers later on, so go ahead and get a drink." Already they're setting you up for success and trying to give you parameters for the evening. So you don't want to be the one that's kind of, rushing last minute to get a bite of something while, something else is going on. So use that kind of setting the scene objectively and make sure that it's, you kind of get a game plan in place. Okay, I'm gonna, do this for 5 or 10 minutes, or I'm gonna get a drink, and then I feel more social, and then I'll, start talking to people, or so on and so forth. So I always feel like that's a good tip or trick. On that note, I always tell people to eat before you go. None of us want to be perceived as the person that's rushing to the hors d'oeuvre table. And I know it's really difficult when we are traveling in, traffic, and it's hard to grab a snack or whatever. But I keep just granola bars in my bag, bottles of water in the car, and Lord knows how many granola bars I've eaten in the course of a week. I I get them from Costco. I tend to go through so many. Because as a consultant, you're traveling from one event to the other, and sometimes you don't have the opportunity to eat. But eating is an important social function. In fact, when it is stripped away from any cultural tradition, it feels stark, it feels uncomfortable, and people tend to be very, very nervous. Can anyone name a time when the last function they had with strangers where there was no food or beverage served? Tonight. Oh, yeah, thanks. Well, in a library setting, it's probably not appropriate, but yeah, and definitely in a classroom setting, maybe not always perceived to have food or beverage, but more like a cocktail hour where like you don't know what to do with your hands, and having that glass of even just water, it's for lack of a better term, they call it like social lubrication. It's just a way to kind of, there's something to do with my hands, I can get a bite to eat, and it's something to connect with people on. And at a very minimum, if you don't have anything to say to each other, you can say, oh, the food's good, did you like the champagne tonight, or whatever. So we're going to loop back to where to put your drinks and coats and all that. But the next tip or trick I'd like to say is go with a purpose. Go with a mission statement, go with a plan. I think when people walk into a room of 50 or 100 people, they get rather nervous, and it's like, oh God, what do I do now? What do I do now? So have goals such as, I'm going to get 3 viable contacts, or I'm going to do a favor for someone else. Like I'm going to be a giver tonight, and I'm going to set up a meeting or a networking opportunity for someone else, and we're going to loop back to that in a bit. But go with a purpose. Don't just say, oh, I'm just going to network. Really kind of have an attainable goal and make it simple. Going to an event such as this, you can use people that you already know, or the people that might be there meeting you. This is a great way to buddy up with someone, not necessarily to follow them around in the same pact, but to have kind of that person that you're like looking at across the room and saying, oh, are you okay? Like, do you need to come get you? Or can you introduce me to someone else? It's a great way to divide and conquer, because if person A knows half the room and person B knows half the room, they can say to each other, can you introduce me to so-and-so? And it's a great way to break into that person's circle of conversation without, feeling awkward or obligated to, dance around on eggshells waiting for them to be free. So, so buddy up with people that you know, and make it a strategy, I guess is what I'm saying. So we've all heard this term, elevator speech, and that simply just means in a succinct way telling them why you're there, what purpose you have, and what you're looking to gain. So my elevator speech is just like 2 sentences. I say, hi, my name is Laurence. I'm a butlering and household management consultant. And when I use the word butler, people usually go, what does that mean? Wow, I didn't know a woman could be a butler. So it's a little bit of a hook to get them in, to get them excited. And then I say, I help families manage their personal lives more effectively. And that's my pitch. And so then the back and forth can occur. We'll talk about that later. But it gives them just a window of, who I am, who I represent, and why I'm there. And then, of course, throughout the networking conversation, you'll have the opportunity to ask for a referral or ask for a lead or, something like that. So I mentioned earlier about, drinks and food and that kind of thing. This is an etiquette tip, is to put everything in your left hand. 90% of the world does greet people with a handshake on the right-hand side, some form of touching on the right-hand side, and it's not appropriate to have your bag or your briefcase or your cold drink on your right side and have to switch. So ladies, myself, I'm more than guilty of this, having a 40-pound bag. Leave that in the car and just take your little folio of business cards in your pocket, and then you're not in a crowded room, kind of bumping into people or having to deal with a coat. I realize that in the tough Chicago winters that nobody wants to walk from their car to the event without their coat, but hopefully your host has already thought about like a coat check or something so that you don't have to carry your coat and your drink at the same time. so everything always in the left hand, just so that you don't have a wet condensation hand. You're not shaking people's hand with, that messy beverage napkin that usually gets destroyed after 2 minutes, that kind of thing. So I like to say 5-minute rule. 5 minutes is the max. If you are speaking with someone that's gone longer than 3 to 4 minutes, it's time to wrap it up. A, because you're taking up their time to meet potential people out in the universe that they're supposed to meet. B, maybe you haven't made a good connection with them. Maybe they're a vendor that wouldn't necessarily be logical for your industry, or you don't see an immediate connection. So maybe you want to try to go and meet, other people that might be more in tune with your industry. And also, if you're saying anything over 3 or 4 minutes, you're probably too long-winded. So within 30 or 45 seconds for the first person, 30 or 45 seconds for the second person. And if both people are adept at conversation, we'll talk about conversation in a minute, there should be a nice back and forth, like a tennis match, before you kind of come to a natural conclusion. And then you can say, oh great, it's been lovely talking with you. We'll exchange cards and I'll follow up later, so we'll get to that. But 5 minutes, way too long. You should be looking for another opportunity to meet new people. And we'll talk about exit strategies in a minute. Actually I have that here, sorry. So to know how to break away from the conversation, this is a moment of grace. And this is where, if you're looking for the next person that you want to talk to, people are instantly going to pick up on that, and they're not going to think that you're a sincere person. So if they catch you doing that, you've got to apologize. You've got to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I was actually looking for my friend, or I saw someone behind you move, or try to get my attention. I didn't mean to not have a personable, connection here. So go ahead and apologize, and it usually catches people off guard when they hear you say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be looking away, because then it just reinforces the fact that you are a genuine person and that they do want to do business with people that they know and trust. So strategies for breaking out of a conversation. Thank them. Thank you, sir or ma'am, for your time. It's been great talking with you. I've really appreciated it. Offer to introduce them to someone else. Jim, I think there's somebody here you'd like to meet. Can I walk you over to Susan? That is a great way of kind of breaking up the conversation. Moving physical locations. This is a great one, and I use this all the time, especially with people on the more long-winded side. If you're stuck in the corner of a room for 30 or 40, we'll not say 30 or 40 minutes, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes, and it's gone way past the opportunity to wrap up that conversation. Actually, physically walking over to the dessert table with them or walking over to the beverage table kind of breaks up the conversation. So if Jim and I are in a conversation and, maybe he's told me one too many stories about his kids or the football game, and I said, oh, Jim, your drink is dry. Let's walk over and get a new beverage, something like that. And just kind of graciously escorting Jim to the other side of the room and engaging in that other activity of pouring our drinks. We'll naturally break away and start talking to other people at the punch bowl. So I use that one quite a bit. Be frank, and don't be shy to be frank. Polite but firm, and say, Jim, it's been a pleasure, but there are other people that I was hoping to meet tonight, and so if I could have your business card and follow up with you tomorrow, I would greatly appreciate it. So that's kind of like the steps of how to end the conversation graciously. And yeah, please.
A question. If you were stuck with someone for that long, would you really be inclined to follow up with them?
Well, for sure. I mean, maybe they're an artistic soul and they're just so excited to meet me that
if it's positive energy.
We'll talk about following up with people, later on. But absolutely, like if I promise to follow up with somebody, I absolutely will. But maybe it's just like it's too much for the here and now. We can't have our first conference at the networking event. We're gonna have to do it the next time,
Okay.
So kind of any other questions on like networking or how to work a room? We talked about food and beverage. We talked about what to do with your belongings. Talked about kind of getting comfortable with people and kind of having that initial conversation. Any questions on that? Okay, so we're going to move on to introductions. And introductions is very interesting and can be quite difficult. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time on this. So, excuse the first thing is to hover around the cluster of people and try to catch eye contact at least twice. So I'm going to demonstrate with my tea over here, and it'll give me the opportunity to take a drink as well. But let's say there were a group of people, gathered over here that I wanted to break in with. So I'm just, standing kind of politely back from the group, and I just kind of peer in and, look and see if I can catch somebody's eye. Usually there's a leader of the group that is controlling the conversation, and they will break the conversation graciously and invite you into the circle. And so that is the #1 best way to do it, and then they'll invite you in, and you introduce yourself, and then they'll either say, here's what we were talking about, or pick up where you left off, or something like that, or they'll just start the conversation entirely over again, and then you can give your introduction and kind of tell people what you do. So breaking in is an art, and you don't want to feel like you're pouncing on people, but if they're not getting the hint, then just, go on to the next people and go to that group when it's appropriate. Now, if there's somebody specifically in that group that you want to meet, like, Mr. CEO, Mr. Important, try to keep your eye on him before he skirts out the door, because that is kind of a whole different topic. But yeah, the introductions is a key thing. So you always want to stand when being introduced, and this is assuming that you're not already standing. And many of you did that tonight when I introduced myself to you. And I know I didn't get a chance to introduce myself to everyone because a few people came in together. But it's just polite. And so if you're sitting in a cocktail lounge type environment and someone comes over there standing, everyone should rise and greet that person. And I would, as an etiquette expert, go so far as to say the gentlemen tend to not know the little tip that they should rise when a lady rejoins the table for dinner. But I think that that's a tangent. So people are not in a custom of rising anymore when someone joins the group. But it comes from that tradition, is that if a lady had to excuse herself throughout these very long 4-hour dinners, she would come back to the table, he would rise, help her with her chair. The chairs were very heavy and her dresses were very elaborate, so it only made sense. And then they would both sit down together. So anyway, that's where it comes from. But I think that it's just a good overall universal way of making sure that the person feels welcome. State your name clearly. So the name thing is probably one of the #1 questions I get asked is, how do you remember people's names? I think in today's age we have so much information that at a quick meeting I would ditch the last names. If you have a diatribe of a long last name, and my maiden name was incredibly long and difficult and people didn't quite catch it, I just think a first name basis, especially in a quick networking event, you're going to be more memorable. They're not going to remember Mr. Schlosky or Mr. this or Mr. that, but Jim, Susan, Karen, they're going to remember that. So you can state your name clearly, and so I'm going to talk about this from 2 different perspectives. Whether you're breaking into a conversation and you have not been introduced to those people, or if you're being introduced to a group. So we're going to start with the first one. If you are introducing someone, a buddy networker, into a group of 3 or 4 people that you know, the only appropriate way to say people's names twice is with this setup. And so I'll repeat it a couple times in case people don't understand. So if I'm in a group of 3 or 4 people, I can say, Jim, Susan, Karen, this is Sarah. I would like you to meet Sarah. Sarah, this is Jim, and if we're using last names, you can say Smith. He works in plumbing. This is so-and-so. He works in mechanicals. And this is so-and-so, a little tip or trick about those types of people. So I said their names twice. I got their attention with their names, and then I introduced the new person to those individuals, but I didn't then say, Karen, this is Jim. Jim, Karen. That's a no-no. So we need to kind of break ourselves of that habit. It's a little bit elementary. It's not effective. And when I move into the harder part of introductions, it's actually going to be an error of etiquette. So hold on to your hats, because this is probably the hardest part of the lecture here. So I'm going to loop back to that in a bit. If you can't remember the people's names, there's a little tip this is kind of a down and dirty secret. You can, like if you're in a group of people and you're trying to introduce your buddy, teammate, you can say, everyone, have you met Jim? And then it's kind of the universal, everybody introduce themselves to my friends. And then they're going to repeat their names for those people. I meet a lot of people in my business, and unfortunately, sometimes I'm not that great with names, and so I elbow my husband if he's with me at a cocktail party, and I say, oh, introduce yourself to that person, so I catch their name again. So if you have a buddy, friend with you, have them take the fall for you so that you can save face professionally. And there's no harm in doing that, because once you make the reconnection, you're obviously going to remember so many more details about the conversation that you had with them previously. You're probably going to want to pick up the conversation the last time you saw each other. Oh, it was so great to see you at last year's Christmas party. I'm sorry we haven't connected, so on and so forth. It's great to see you again. What's his name, And then you're going to get that person's information. So here is, any questions on that before I get into the crux of this more difficult piece of information? Okay. So formal introductions, it's never taught in school, but there is actually a format. And if everybody wants to write this down, it will make this section go a lot easier. It's Mr. More Important. May I introduce Mr. Less Important? And that is the absolute etiquette around the world, customary way of introducing someone to a group of people or an individual. So the way of saying that more delicately is always take the name of the person with the higher rank and present the person of the lower rank. So we're going to go through a couple different scenarios on this so that people get it in their minds, and then we're going to say what not to say because it actually reverses the introduction. So it can be a bit confusing, but basically means you should state the name of the person of the higher rank and then present the other person to them. So if there was a king, you would say, Your Highness, this is the court jester, And so you wouldn't say, court jester, this is the king, because then you're kind of giving him the status. Make sense? Here's some examples. When introducing a friend or significant other to a relative, the relative has higher rank. So if you're bringing home a boy or girl for dad to meet, you want to say, Dad, I'd like you to meet my boyfriend, Danny. Makes sense? Because he's the master of the house, Danny's the newcomer. You want him to make a good impression on your father, so you're presenting Danny to the father. Introduce a lower-ranking business associate to a higher-ranking business associate. Mr. CEO, I'd like to introduce Mr. Underling. So, business setting, it could be a group of people or an individual meeting, perhaps shortly before a board meeting or so on and so forth, someone walked in. That is where they're not in a business-client relationship. So the next one, this is where it gets tricky, is introduce a client to the business associate, because you want to elevate the business associate to your colleague. So if I had a colleague in business and I had a potential deal, I would want to make sure that the client is elevated in that introduction. So, Mr. Client, I'm so pleased that you're here. Please let me introduce my business partner. So you're elevating the status of the client and making them feel important. Introducing a man to a woman. So the woman is always first, as women are, still in our culture, even though it's, we're in the age of enlightenment, all these things, there's certain graces that I hope will never die. Opening a door for a lady, having her, helping her with her seat, and giving her the opportunity to have the gentleman be introduced to her, or her to the gentleman, rather. But in a business setting, the rank takes precedence over gender. So if Mr. Thomas is a higher ranking male than Mrs. Davis, Mr. Thomas gets the higher authority because of his business position, even though Mrs. Davis is a woman. So, Mr. Thomas, the CEO, may I introduce Ms. Davis, the secretary. That's a head full. So let me break it down for a few things that snag people up. you never want to use the words to you. So think of the band, you two. Think of the band you two, it's incorrect. Because what you're doing then is you're reversing the introduction. So if you've got Mr. More Important, may I introduce you to Mr. Less Important, you've actually flip-flopped the introduction. So scratch it completely from your vocabulary. The best way to make a formal introduction is Mr. More Important, may I introduce Mr. Less Important? And just leave the you to or to you out of it, and then you're never in danger of reversing the introduction. Any questions on that? Is this the first time that anyone has heard how to introduce people formally?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah?
Okay, so can I ask a couple more questions?
Sure.
A few of us already know. I've been to networking events. I am not young, and I don't know all this stuff. I am college educated and master's degree. How could, does everybody know all these things so far, or is some of this a good refresher or kind of new?
This is all new.
Okay, so I feel very much at home now.
Oh, good. Well,
No.
I mean, the point of professional development is to always stretch and grow ourselves in ways that we have not ever thought about before. So I'm glad that this is new information. It's a win-win either way. If it's new information, you gain something from the class, and if it's not new information, then you're already an expert. So I think either way, it's important that we take refreshers on these things. But yeah, not many people, like I mentioned previously, these were traditions that were passed down as readily from families to the younger generation. It just depends on what family you're raised in. I have no musical ability whatsoever. I cannot play guitar. I can sing, I can carry a tune in the shower, but I was never taught how to play an instrument. And for some families, that's so second nature. Their dad played guitar at Christmas time, or those kind of things. And so whatever your traditions are within the family environment in which you were raised, that's going to be your frame of reference. And so I never want to fault anyone for not knowing everything about everything, but thank God we have the internet these days, because we have so much more knowledge at our fingertips than we ever thought possible 50 years ago. Even 30 years ago, we were still lugging around those Encyclopedia Britannicas, trying to look up, information. So I think that as the world gets smaller, we're able to kind of loop back to some of the things that were forgotten during the boom of the information age. But this is what will set you apart. And then, people who are especially in my world, in the affluent communities, high-ranking CEOs and officials and that kind of thing, absolutely, this is key. This is key. I'll take a brief break here just for a second to tell you a little bit about the last project I was working on. I came back from Peak Technical Institute, which is one of the butlering and household management schools here in North America. And they actually are one of the schools that contract with our United States Air Force. So for those of you that don't know, every branch of our U.S. government, for the 3- and 4-star generals, has essentially a butler. They're called an enlisted aide, and they do very specific things because they're paid for with our tax dollars, so they're not polishing silver, but they're taking care of the professional entertaining on behalf of the general. They're taking care of their uniforms and making sure that they're packed and ready to go when they have to go on deployment. And they're taking care of the household in the common areas at the GO's residence on base. So it was very exciting, and it was a privilege to be able to pass along all of these etiquette and protocol type tips and tricks to people that are serving our country in a unique and powerful way. But I think the military and people who run in these circles very much still adhere to the old etiquette standards, where there's a little bit more pomp and circumstance. And I think in the passage of our lives, at moments that are big, we always want a little bit more pomp and circumstance. At a wedding, we always want a little bit more etiquette. At a baby shower, when do I send out the thank you notes? At a funeral, who sits where? So I think that people just have shifted, but they don't necessarily realize that they have ever gotten away from it. They still want to look back and Google, how long do I have to send out thank you notes after receiving a gift? Does that answer your question? So I was delighted to work with the EAs, the enlisted aides, and it was really, really cool to see these principles put into practice for all of our benefits, because those GOs do entertain heads of state and dignitaries at a very high level, and it's a privilege to work with them and get them up to their skill set. So anyway, the last thing I want to talk about for introductions is name tags. So 99.95% of people put their name tag on the left. And that is usually because when we were taught in school to say the pledge, we take our right hand, we put it over our heart. You know, that's kind of, we put our wedding rings on our left hand. So it's kind of like the honoring thing to do is put it on the left. But technically, you're supposed to put it on the right.
I just wrote left.
Yeah, no. So 99% of people will, no, so don't make your note quite yet because I'm moving back to it. So yeah, 99% of people will put it on the left. Technically, it should go on the right, and the reason being is when you shake someone's hand, their eye can go right up the arm to the name tag,
That makes sense.
and you don't have to cross your eyes across, especially a lady's chest, to read the name. So, that being said, what's the first rule of etiquette? The first rule of etiquette is to make people feel comfortable. So where do I, even as an etiquette expert, put my name tag? I put it on the left. Because 99% of people don't know that rule. And if you look at 100 people at a networking event, they will all be on the left. And, you know, do I want to stick out like a sore thumb and make people feel bad for not knowing to put it on the right? No. I put it on the left. If I'm at my butlering convention with 200 other butlers and etiquette associates, we always put it on the right. Because it's our industry, and so we know to do that. But yeah, I even today was at a networking event, and I just slap it on the left and don't even think twice. But it makes sense to put it on the right, so we shake with our right hands. So know that if somebody has it on the opposite side, they're a smart cookie, and they know what they're doing. Sound good? Okay. So moving on to handshakes. Handshakes, I think we pretty much have down, but I want to just review for the sake of reviewing and maybe give you a little bit of a cultural overview on the ways that other cultures shake hands or greet each other. If you're ever in a business environment that would need a different type of greeting. So in the Asian countries, except Japan, it's a gentle handshake. No bone crushing, very light, what we would consider in the United States like a limp fish handshake. Anything more than that, it's considered domineering and almost rude. So if you're working with an Asian person, they have a very light touch. Mirror them and lighten your grip, or just kind of know after you shake the first person's hand that he gave you a light touch, and oh, I'm probably going to need to lighten my grip a little bit. In Japan, they prefer, as I'm sure we're all well aware, to make a quick bow. And the level of reverence or the importance of the person determines how long and how low you bow. You bow from the waist, but if you don't know the person well, it's just a quick hello, you can kind of nod from the neck. But if it's an important, let's say it's a 100-year-old centenarian and they're being honored for something, you want to give them kind of a deep, reverent bow that's nice and slow, and that will elevate you in the eyes of those persons there. In Britain, a handshake or just a friendly smile, they're less inclined to touch in Britain, so don't be offended if a British person just kind of gives you a wave and says, cheerio. They don't do the firm American handshake like we do. Americans, we are known for bone-crushing handshakes. So I would say that don't be a bone crusher, but a nice, firm, solid 3 pumps is the rule, and then you let go. And so we're going to practice that at the end of the evening. But I think we all have a pretty good understanding of what a good handshake is. Is anyone a social dancer? Does anyone do any ballroom or salsa dancing? Tango, foxtrot? Well, I'm a ballroomer. That's my hobby. So when they talk about in ballroom, if you've ever watched Dancing with the Stars, the people have to meet and give the same amount of pressure in order to get the direction so that they know which way to go. Does that make sense? So if this person is crushing and this person's too limp, they're not meeting pressure-wise. So a good handshake will have the same amount of pressure as if you're kind of meeting and pressing into each other, but not one person is not domineering the other. Make sense? because you want to be on equal footing with someone that you want to do business with. The French, very famous, oui, they kiss twice on the left. And so you go to your left, and the other person goes to their left. So then you don't meet in the middle and accidentally give someone a kiss on the lips. But men, women, business associates, it's not a touching kiss. It's actually just where you turn your cheek and you just make the noise on that side. But you don't ever have to touch their cheek or kiss them. But it's actually very much the standard greeting. Is you go in, you give them the little noise, and then that's it. So in the international circles that I work in, this is very common. And so I know it's a little bit uncomfortable for Americans, but we want to be networking, experts. And so if we're faced with some of these other situations, we want to make sure that we're going to be on our game. The Italians are huggers. So I don't know if anybody comes from an Italian family, or I come from a Mediterranean family. My family's Greek American. They go in for the handshake, and then they do like the bro hug, no matter who it is. So this is more common. The bro hug is more common with guys. Hey man, what's up? And they kind of give you the pat. But with women, they'll give you the full-on hug. It's nice to meet you. And so just be aware that even in a business environment, somebody may be feeling more free with their hugs. And just embrace that as a cultural difference, but that they're really trying to meet you on a heart level. So Spanish, always hug and a kiss. Kiss, kiss. Sometimes we'll do the European thing, kiss, kiss, with a quick hug. So the Swiss apparently have a great life up there because they have no war, they've got all their money. So there's 3 kisses. And they start on the left. So this is where you get into the back and forth. So they'll go kiss to the left, kiss to the right, kiss to the left, and then that'll be it. And possibly with a handshake. So just know that if they're going back and forth, and you're going, Lord, when is this going to end? Usually 3 is the limit. In the Arab countries, men only do the air kisses for men, and obviously women only do the air kisses for women. So there's a lot of cultural separation between the genders there. And in fact, in the Arab countries and in a lot of like Orthodox Judaism, a man won't touch a woman even in business, even to shake her hand. It's a modesty thing. So if they don't reach their hand out, don't make them feel bad that they're not shaking your hand. They'll just kind of give you the wave, and then that'll be fine. And we have a big Jewish community here in Chicago, so it's important to know if they look like they're from a community that's maybe more religious, you might not necessarily get a handshake if you're of the opposite gender. Any questions on handshakes? Who feels like they have a good handshake?
Not anymore, no. Well, that.
Don't be too hard on yourself. You're too hard on yourself. Anyone else? You're a good handshaker? Yeah? Good. So we're going to move into the art of conversation. And this loops back to, we've gone to the networking event, we've made our appropriate introductions. Now, what the heck do we talk about? And there are definitely some do's and don'ts. So I will have everybody repeat after me so that we're all good little students and we learn something today that will impact those around us. We're going to say it's not acceptable to ask people personal questions. Can everybody say that? It's not acceptable to ask personal questions. Never, ever, 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 ever. So in a professional setting, in a church environment, at a sporting event, it is never okay. And so this kind of has people taken aback. And they say, well, how do I make heartfelt personal connections with people if I can't ask them personal questions? So the personal questions I'm referring to are the hot button ones, and you might want to write these down. Personal questions involve family situation, whether they're married, single, partner, divorced, widowed, Anything like that is never, ever, ever okay to ask if you don't know the person. And if you know the person and they eat dinner at your house on Friday night, you already know the answer to that question. So it's never okay. If they have a wedding ring on, not okay to ask. You know, even though that's an outward symbol of an inward confession, maybe their spouse has died. Maybe they're getting a divorce. You don't want to stick yourself into a very sticky situation by asking about someone's family. This includes children. I can't tell you how many times I'm asked this in a day. I go to 3 to 5 events every day. And as a woman in business, you know, it can become a sore spot. And I'll share with the group, you know, I don't have children as of yet, and I don't care to go into details why, but if somebody asks that, it's like I always have to give an explanation. Like, why don't you have kids? Well, do you want kids? It just takes the conversation an entirely wrong approach. You know, maybe we're trying, maybe we've lost a child, maybe it's just not the right time. Furthermore, a man or a woman, whether or not they do or don't have children, it takes away the conversation from what they're actually trying to do there is network for their professional life. And they want to leave the kids at home, and they don't want to talk about Susie's soccer or, you know, Billy's violin lessons. They want to be an individual that is there on their own merit. And so sometimes I think parents do this very, you know, good-naturedly, and they want to connect with other moms and other dads in the area. And they say, oh, well, how many kids do you have? How many kids, what soccer are they involved in? Or are they on the basketball team? But unless you're at a specific child's type sporting event where you're connecting with other parents and that's the reason for you to go, it's just a hot button. And please just avoid getting yourself into that type of situation. Other things that are obviously hot topics, politics, religion, current events. You know, I really don't care to talk about the latest shootings in this country. That gets into a whole can of worms that's just not acceptable in any circumstance. Even if you are religious and you're at Sunday morning at your house of worship, people have very different a difference of opinion on why that occurred, what should be done, and in 3 to 5 minutes at social hour, it's just, you're not going to solve the world's problems. So it's just, please just table those conversations for the people that you really know and care about. Leave them at the bar when you guys are specifically debating politics and religion with your buddies. Even their charitable organizations, you know, do you give to St. Jude? Well, why do you give to St. Jude? Did you have a child die, or what? You know, why do you have a Make-A-Wish Foundation sticker on your car? So it's just too poignant of a point on what's meant to be an overall arching get-to-know-you type of conversation. So here's some things that are good to say as an opposite. What is your profession? Or how do you spend your time? So for working persons at a networking event, what is your profession, or you know, who do you represent, is a great open-ended question as to, you know, why you're here. But you know, if there's a stay-at-home mom that perhaps she's at the event, sometimes she might feel bad that she doesn't work outside the home. So how do you spend your time? It's just a very gracious way of letting the person open up the conversation to what they want, how they want to answer that question. I know some retired persons that feel a big hole is out of their life for no longer working. But when you say, how do you spend your time? You can open up to hobbies or interests or travel. You know, there's so many other ways that they can answer that doesn't define the person by their position. There's a lot of people who are networking for other opportunities in here. A great way to answer this, if you're asked this question, you know, what do? You can say, I'm in the such and such industry and I'm seeking such and such opportunity. Much better than saying I'm unemployed. And I know as a consultant, another word for, you know, consultant is underemployed, because you're constantly having to look for your next paycheck. So, you know, I would say something like, you know, I'm a butler and household manager consultant. I'm looking for families that are disorganized and need some professional organizational help. That's usually how I answer that question. Why did you get into that line of work? People love talking about themselves. Because anyone read or is anyone interested in reading The Importance of Being Earnest? I'm sorry, forgive me. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Great book, years and years ago. It's a standard staple in the business, professional development library. So in this book, they talk about the fact that people love to hear themselves talk. So if you can get a person talking about their interests, their hobbies, they'll loop back to their children if they want you to know about what their kids are doing. They'll open up those avenues of conversation. It helps them in their mind to know and trust you, and they're more likely to do business with you. So I just let the person talk. I say my piece. If they're interested in what I do, great, we make a connection. If not, I give them their 3 minutes, and you never know, because they're going to know somebody that might need your services, and it's so much better not to just cut them off than have them walk away thinking that was a really gracious interaction and I like that person. So I let people talk. How did you come to be at this event is a great question instead of all those hot button ones. So that could be at the event, the location, the church, etc. Even at a church, they might not really be happy there. They might have had a spouse or partner drag them there for the holidays, so you don't want to get into religious questions with them, So how did you come to be here? They can simply say, I'm here because so-and-so brought me, or I'm curious about the organization, or so on and so forth. And then a follow-up question to that is, have you been here before? Easy, just keeps the conversation going, but then you're not going down a path that is, particular for people. What do you do in your spare time? So this is the hobbies question, very open-ended, very easy. It's a great way to get people talking. And then you can say, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about sailing or curling or knitting or, rubber stamping. So that's a great way to lengthen the conversation. Are you from the area? Now be careful with this because there are some clear divides in socioeconomic areas within, any area, but especially the Chicagoland area. You don't want to pigeonhole somebody into being ashamed of where they're from. So you can just say, was traffic long, or like, did you, have you been here before, something like that. And if they want to tell you where they're from and how they came to be at the event, they'll go down that path with the conversation. So if they do take the bait with, are you from the area, then you can follow up and just say, how long have you lived here? That's the simple approach. So we're just kind of circulating it around to the most gracious, kind of flowy conversation and not getting anything specific in any one or two area. I like to follow it up with, have you seen any good movies lately? So this is just a very neutral, it doesn't have to be in terms of politics or religion or preferences or art or culture. It's just kind of wrapping up with, have you been to anything fun? What did you do on your summer vacation? Those types of questions. And they're usually a great way to kind of wrap things up, get to know the person, but we've avoided all those hot button issues that can really set people off. And wouldn't it be a shame if the one person that you needed to get that business card from, you had this bad interaction with? Has anyone ever played The Sims? That computer game where you've seen the interaction? The Sims are these little human-like persons that have these personalities. They're quite intuitive. It's amazing. It's a video game, so it's amazing how involved it gets. But if one Sim is talking to the other Sim, you don't hear the Sim language, you just see the speech bubbles go back and forth. And if you ever had that point when somebody says something to you that's off-putting, I always think those little red speech bubbles coming up. Because it's that wasn't a question that I was happy answering. When someone asks me the child question, well, do you have kids yet? It's not a question I want to go down that path, So I try to deflect graciously or, do something like that. But, I always have a little image of the Sims in my head as to, how we interact with each other. And if the conversation's going good, we have little green lights. And if it's not going so great, we have little red lights.
So in general, you want to be neutral, you want to be positive, but you don't want to be personal.
Exactly.
Because any of that is just considered very personal.
Keep it personable, but not too personal,
Sure.
is the phrase in Butler School.
Thank you.
Yeah, keep it personable, but not too personal. And that's with our employers as well. So Laura and I are going to have a cup of coffee, I hope, hopefully, and we'll discuss all the ways in which we interact with our employers in their personal lives, in their spaces that we work in. And that's, what we say is that, look, you see them at every moment of the day. They haven't even had their coffee yet. You don't want to be talking about their marriage, their family, their children. You are kind of the fourth wall. You're there to serve them. You're there to be a support mechanism, but it's still like your office setting and their home. So there's like this line of decorum that we don't want to cross. But anyway, that's kind of getting specific into my industry. So the only other thing I want to talk about in terms of kind of what questions to ask and how to answer them is have an opinionless conversation in a business setting. In other words, keep it neutral. So on the last question we talked about, did you see the new movie? Did you see the new Batman movie or whatever? If the other person says, I think Ben Affleck did a terrible job, that kind of sets you up, right? What if you liked it? You're going to kind of butt heads over that. That's not a great interaction. If you didn't like it, you know what? Don't take the bait. Just say, no, I didn't see it, and just kind of gloss over and go on to something else. So they're pinpointing you on a specific that you might not want to answer. So be a good navigator of the conversation. It's just like a boat. You kind of just twist and turn past the little pitfalls that you don't want to deal with and move on. So we're going to kind of move on past the questions into more of the actual conversation, and then...
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're networking at an event, do you talk business at all, or
Oh, yeah. You're going to say your elevator speech 3 to 5 minutes, and hopefully it's just going to be all business related. But if the conversation stalls, you've got to have some tricks in your bag to keep it jovial without wrapping up too abruptly. Because if you only just both said your elevator pitches, then you wouldn't have anywhere to go from there if you're in two totally different opportunities.
But if you're trying to, let's say, meet a CEO, so you're asking questions about his job or his company, is that okay to
Oh, yeah.
bombard him with questions?
Not bombard, but yeah, definitely go down the track of the questions that you need answered if they're professional. So, Mr. CEO, I'm very interested in what the New York Times said about your company this week. So-and-so, I saw your stock rose 3 points. Can you tell me about that? You don't want to sound like a news reporter, but you want to make sure that they think you're engaged with what they're doing. And again, it's a way for them to talk about themselves because they're very passionate about what they're doing. And if you give them the opportunity to have the floor, then they're going to know and trust you because you've given them all the airtime. So, any follow-up thoughts on that? Did that answer your question? Yeah. So let's say we've done our elevator speech, we've had the small talk, and it's all gone great. The next thing you're going to want to do is ask for a referral, a lead, etc., to get the right type of network opportunity that you're looking for. Mr. CEO, I'd really like to apply for your company. Do you have the name of your HR person? Would it be okay if I submitted a resume? You're asking for the job right there.
Is that okay to ask?
Oh, yeah. Is it okay? Hopefully I made a good impression on you, sir. I'm interested in such and such a position with your company. Hopefully you've done your homework and you are actually interested in that particular opportunity. Would it be okay if I contacted your HR department? So that's the way you can ask for a job or a lead on a job. If you're not speaking directly with that industry that you're focused on, you can ask the person, let's say you're from two totally different industries. We've got IT and skincare, So then you can say, if the IT professional is looking for a job, he can ask the skincare representative, well, by the way, we've had a great conversation and I know that you're in skincare, but does anyone in your circles work in IT that might be hiring? That's awesome. You're asking for the opportunity to make a meaningful connection, even though you're in two totally different industries. You don't necessarily think that you could be good for each other, but it's all about who those other people know. It's like spider web. So you want to ask for what you want. If she says, no, there's nobody I know in IT, you haven't really hit it off, you can then say, well, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? That is the kicker. We are so busy. It takes an extra ounce of merit to ask someone else what you can do for them without anything in return. But boy, will that go miles if she knows of someone that needs your services. So let's say the skincare representative representative says, well, why, yes, I'm actually looking for a new website host. Can you make a recommendation? You know, he then can say, well, I'm not in website design specifically, but I use GoDaddy, I use Wix, I use Weebly for my personal website. And then she can say, oh no, I haven't heard about that. He'll say, I'm happy to send you a link. So by giving her something in return, there's a reason to exchange the business card if it's not an immediate connection for you and your circles. So this is a great one, and people don't follow up on this enough, but how long does it take? 3 to 5 minutes. You know, you're going to send a thank you note email anyway, thanking them for the interaction at the last night cocktail party. So here's a quick link on something we talked about. Have a good day. Wow, then they know it's not a spam bot turning out the thank you notes. You know, if you go to one of those speed networking events and you walk away with 50 business cards, they're going to think, oh, this thank you note isn't genuine. But if you put that personal touch in there, that says, I remember the interaction and I remember what you needed, it's just going to like put you 100% up in their minds. Sound good? Has anyone ever had an interaction with this or an example? Has someone just offered out of the goodness of their heart to give you a link, a tip, a trick, send you an article that they read that might be helpful? Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Happens all the time, yeah.
Did you think about that in terms of a networking strategy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
I had a recruiter recently send me an article, a link to an article, and I do that too, just from time to time. So you always have to think about giving first, just paying it forward.
It's so true. It's so true. And we're in the holidays now, so hopefully we're a little bit more in that mindset. But it just makes it just makes everybody go the extra mile, and that's, I think, is so important. Anyone else have an example of that? Okay, so the last thing in terms of the actual conversation that takes place is it's been nice talking with you, kind of wrap the conversation, good meeting you, I look forward to talking with you again. Don't make promises to call or get together again soon unless you intend to. So if the IT person, the skincare person really didn't make a positive connection, at a minimum, they still should send each other a thank you note for meeting them the following evening, or the evening prior. But then there's not a promise made of future business. So if I get 50 business cards at a speed networking event, I send 50 emails the next day. And for those of you that do a CRM, you type the email, you put it in your CRM, and they come with potential lead that you can send your newsletter to, redirect them to your website, and your signature at the bottom of your email, it redirects to your website. So even in just the thank you, it's an opportunity to touch that potential client or their network of potential clients at least just once. And it's my habit that if we didn't get a good connection or anything to come out of the conversation, I'll just put in my CRM to follow up with them in 6 months and just say, oh, hey, just, how's your skincare business going? Are you still doing that? I'm still doing IT. Here's my website in case you're interested. And who knows, in the span of 6 months, their needs might have changed. And because you've been in touch with them, they're going to then follow up with you and say, oh, thank you so much for calling or sending an email. It's so great to hear from you. So just being diligent, and that's why a CRM is so helpful, is that it will keep track of how many times you've spoken with that person, and even just a simple Outlook or Google will do that for you, so you don't have to invest a lot of money in that. So yeah, always thank the people that I meet the night prior. If they exchange their business card with me, if they don't, well, too bad. Hopefully they take my information, they contact me. But I think it's imperative to have business cards at a business function. So with that, we are at the stopping place for a break. We've got 3 more topics to hit before the end of the night. Do we want to take a 5-minute break, or do we want to power through? Is it 8 o'clock yet? It's 8:15.
My friend out there, can she come in for that?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Let's break for a bit, and we'll go back to business card etiquette in a moment.
I got one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right,
Sometimes
Right.
Well, thanks everybody. Welcome back. So we just have a few more topics to conclude with. with for tonight's lecture. And we've talked about networking, we've talked about the art of conversation, we've talked about how to give a good handshake, how to make a great first impression. Now, how do you get their information? Well, 9 times out of 10, it's a business card. So I have a few things that might shock and surprise you about the proper way to hand someone a business card. So we're going to jump right into that. First of all, I have 2 business card folios. This metal one is great for a purse or a pocket. You don't want to ever present your business card with dog-eared or stained or written someone else's information on the back. It's the last one you're kind of cramming out of your wallet. So I always recommend these. You can get them at Office Depot, Staples, any kind of office supply store. They come in all different sizes, shapes, colors, black, blue, whatever you'd like. And then this type folio for a networking event, because it holds more, so I can slip in easily and grab as many as I need for that individual, because sometimes they're so enthused with your business that they say, well, give me 3 or 4. Well, this one only holds 5 or 7, maybe 10 on a good day. So this is the one I keep in my wallet so that they don't get dog-eared. This is the one I keep in my car and I keep with my whole big box of, of business cards. So business cards are interesting. People, when they're picking a profession, they pick something, hopefully, that has a meaning to them and is based on who they are as a person. I am not an animal person. I don't like dogs. I don't like cats. I work with a lot of them, but I would never see myself going into the, veterinary medicine or working in an animal shelter or something like that. I have great, esteem and regard for people that do, but it's just not who I am. I was meant to be working in households and arranging flowers and parties and working with children, and I just love the art of homemaking. So when people choose a profession, it's a part of them, and the Japanese actually have extended this a step further, and they say that the soul of the person lives in a business card, which is very interesting. It's a unique thought, but people put time, they put energy into their logo, their design. They're working for a company that hopefully they're proud of. So don't pass them out like playing cards. You're not going to make a personal connection with someone. You're not making an impression on them whatsoever. So, I was at a networking event today, and they're like, you get a business card, and you get a business card, and you get a business card, and you get a business card. I kind of akin this to dating. I want to do business with you. I want to do business with you. Not okay. So the speed networking events, I go because it's the nature of the event. But if somebody just starts passing their business cards down the line, I never follow suit. Because A, it's a waste of business cards. Business cards are expensive, and you're never going to get a follow-up from somebody who just received your business card in a stack of 20 other business cards. So remember that your business card has a soul. And if I'm going to make a personal connection with someone, I'm offering to be in touch with them in the future. I've made a connection with them. You're handing a piece of who you are to them and saying, I want to follow up with you as a person, as an individual, as somebody that we can connect with. So the Japanese consider it very distasteful to hand a business card one-handed. This would be offensive in the Asian cultures. So we do this in America. We whip out our business cards and we say, oh, here you go, here's my information. Okay, I take your business card and we stuff it away. Not so in Asian cultures. They take out their business card, and does anyone have a business card in the front row so I can demonstrate how to do this? You guys have business cards with you? That's fine, that's fine. We're going to do better tomorrow. $5 at Office Depot. Okay, so let's say we've had a great connection, and you're going to hold on to it just for a second. And we talked, and we're going to follow up with each other. And typically we would just do that. Oh, here you go. Hand it over, and you shove it away. Oh, okay, Scott, thanks, bye. You shove it in your pocket. Remember that this is who this person is. So take a page out of the Japanese book. Stop for a minute. Consider the design. Consider the logo, the motif, and hold it in your hand for the entirety of the conversation. So that's the takeaway for an American audience. Going one step further, if you're exchanging a business card with a Asian person, they're actually going to present the business card to you with 2 hands. So that, thank you, and so I would do it, or whoever's doing it first would do it first, and you receive it with 2 hands. Yeah, and then you kind of whip around with your, and then I take it back. And we hold on to it, and we consider the logo, we put it in our hands, we say, oh, Scott, pleasure, oh, very nice. We kind of look at it, and then it makes a lasting impression. We don't want to scribble on somebody's business card. That's an absolute no-no in an Asian culture. It's just, write their name or what you talked about. Just keep it in the back of your mind, put a Post-it note in your pocket, whatever you have to do. But especially if you're going to scan it into a CRM, you've scribbled all over their person, and now it's in your computer forever. It's just not a tasteful way to present it. So we don't want to do this and make people feel uncomfortable in America by handing our business card very ceremoniously to every person that we meet. You have to kind of be gracious about this. So just know that in some cultures, the 2-handed method is preferred. So if you see someone go to do the 2-handed method, quickly just change your hand frame to do the 2-handed method. But in America, obviously, they're going to take out their business card, they're going to hand it to you, you're going to have to receive it, but consider it for a moment. Just hold it for the length of the conversation before you put it away. Cool? Awesome. So that's my little business card etiquette. And what I do at a networking event, so I've got all my business cards in here. I have business cards for people that I work closely with, in case I need to give out a different type of business card. But I keep my business cards in the back here, and then anyone I meet that night, I put in the front here. So then I just remember that I need to email that person. So it has multiple pockets, and it's a great way to do it. And so if you've got like a little folio, again, I'm going to demonstrate this one more time. Well, these are a little sticky, they're brand new, sorry. So you've got it ready. They're either handing it to you with one hand, or they go for the 2-handed method. All you got to do is whip your folio around, make that other hand free, and then present it to them. But again, etiquette is about the art of making people feel comfortable. So don't do the whole konnichiwa thing, and it's not the person doing it back with you. But we certainly do this at our butlering convention because people are aware of this etiquette. Yes, ma'am?
Is it appropriate to comment?
Yes, you want to. Oh, what a beautiful business card. And oh, I love your font. Or it really makes the person feel good that you put so much time and effort into it, and it's a part of who you are. And you're doing skincare because you care passionately about making people feel beautiful, and it's something that is a part of your persona now. So you want to make sure that it's received graciously. Sound good? So we don't have to get into a big motion with this, but just be aware of treating the business card with respect, I think is the takeaway from that. And respect them in your wallet, and don't dog ear them anymore.
Are both of those from home or Office Depot, or they're...
Yeah, at $4 or $5, I keep them both in my briefcase, but this just gives me a stack of at least 50, and then this one's for my wallet, so I don't have to shove them into where my check folio is, and they get all dog-eared and beat up, because you don't want to present yourself in that manner either. It's like, oh, this one's not great, here you go, sorry. Well, you don't want to represent yourself as a sloppy business individual. So just make sure they're crisp. So don't pass them out like business cards. Wink, wink, kind of like dating. If you're not going to date the person, you don't want to be passing them out like candy. If you actually have a real honest connection with someone, that's the time to exchange a business card. Business cards have a soul, they have a meaning, they represent the person that you're connecting with. And the Japanese and Asian traditions for handing out that business card are much more ceremonial than they are in the US, but we can take a piece of that away by considering the business card for a moment before we just shove it away. And then, of course, one other method in France, business cards are not usually exchanged standing up. They're exchanged at like a function or a board meeting. So you would turn it face down, and you slide it across the table to the other person, and they don't touch it until the end of the conversation. So those are the only two kind of real big considerations when passing out business cards internationally. As the Asian traditions, and then the French turn it over face down and slide standing up, you can grab it and put it in your wallet. Cool, huh? If you're ever on Jeopardy, you can use that one. So you've been given a business card now. What are you going to do with it? Hopefully, you're going to follow up. Follow up, follow up, follow up. It takes 7 times of contacting someone to make a sale, or to make a job connection, or to get an introduction. To get what you want out of people takes 7 times. So if you collect all these business cards like playing cards and throw them in a basket, you're never going to get the follow through that you need to be successful. And it's not about who they might be good for, it's about who they might know to bring into your circles. So I talked about CRMs briefly, but if you're not tech savvy, the actual business card box that you get your business cards from, like Vistaprint or wherever, Zazzle, they come in $250, they come in $500, they come in $1,000. It's a measure for me how many I've handed out, because I never just pass them out willy-nilly. I pass on a business card, I receive a business card, I send that person an email, and I put it in the back of the stack. So if I had a box here, it'd all be in a row, kind of like that old-fashioned Rolodex. And I put the, I do with what I'm going to do with the business card, put it in the back, and then, maybe every 6 months I loop through and go through all those business cards and follow up with them. That's a very low-tech way, if you're not tech-savvy, of making sure every 6 months you're touching every business card. If you want to scan it in, throw it away, keep it in your CRM. That way, if you are tech-savvy, you can email that information in a virtual introduction to someone, and they already have their business card attached. So that's really nice. If you're recommending a dog walker or some other kind of service, you can say, here's a dog walker, I recommend it, and boom, here's the business card, right in the attachment. So it just depends on your level of comfort there. Do not take a business card that you're not willing to send a follow-up thank you email. It's just like it's a wasted interaction. So if you met the person, they smelled, you didn't like what they talked about, it was not a good connection, but they handed you a business card, you never know who they know. And so just a 30-second, you can even cut and paste. At that point, I don't care. Hey, boom, change the name. Great to meet you last night, hit send. At least it's the courteous thing to do, and it's not as, tedious as writing out thank you notes, but at least it's that interaction to say, I appreciate your time. We talked about offering to do them a favor. Pretend you are working a deal when you do that. So if you offer to send someone an article in exchange for a follow-up or exchange for a business card, pretend it's as important as sending them information on a deal. So if you're a car salesman, pretend it's like you're going to get a deal out of it. Even if they ask for some kind of sports-related article you read and you mentioned. So, if you offer to send them information, send it, and that just shows good faith that you're going to be good in business and a good follow-through type of individual. So we've surveyed this scene, we've put our business name tags on correctly, we've shaken everybody's hand, we've worked the room, we've gotten a few key business cards, and now we're going to leave. So this is just wrapping it up. Be a gracious guest. Thank the host for the event. Even if it's a professional event planner, they worked hard. I do lots of events, and I know how difficult it is, even with Eventbrite or these other apps and things, how tedious it is for the follow-up and the advertising of the event. Thank them for the food, thank them for their hospitality, thank them for keeping you on the list. Ask them when the next networking opportunity is. Perhaps offer to pitch in if it feels appropriate. You'll look like the better person if you want to pick up a few glasses and clean off the table. It's not necessarily in like a hotel setting where they have servers to do that or such, but if it's in a more personable environment, offer to pitch in. If you stay the whole 2 hours, you never know who you're going to meet at the bitter end, and you can kind of clean up and continue that conversation with them, and boy, you just walk away smelling like roses. So be a gracious guest. That's pretty much it. I want to wrap up with just any questions you might have or anything that was just totally new for you, something that you're going to change for next time or try to do better at.
I thought just when you showed the example of passing, several cards down the line and everything, I read a book somewhere, I can't remember who it was, but the author kind of stated the rule, don't said that was, he wants to discipline you into really connecting personally with people and try to, make that personal connection. Do you agree with that? I mean, is that-
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you're reiterating the point that I was trying to make, so I'm glad you heard it in a different way,
Yeah.
and you're feeding it back to me. That's exactly what I would say, is that unless you're gonna make a personal connection with that individual, there's no reason to exchange information. It's like you're gonna date the person, are you really gonna call them? No. So don't make the poor person wait by the phone that they're gonna get a date, Just thank you for their time and yeah, absolutely.
You said 7 times. When does it become annoying and when does it become you're bothering the person?
When they tell you.
Okay.
And any sales book will say that. If you're a lawn care service and they continue to say, oh, not right now, the cousin Jimmy's mowing the lawn, call me later. Well, then they're giving you an invitation to call them in 6 months or 3 months or whatever the appropriate follow-up time is. So I wouldn't call them every day, I wouldn't call them every week, but, first interaction, maybe 2 weeks out, maybe a month out, maybe 3 months out, 6 months out, until they say, take me off your mailing list. Yeah. You just never know. The 6th one might be, oh, Jimmy just quit. I need your services. So, and we're all just selling, whether we're selling ourselves, we're selling our services, we're selling the opportunity for someone to buy from us or connect with us. Everything ends up being